Hello. Well, I'm very glad today to welcome Brian Wilcox from VRX Solutions. And they're offering groundbreaking services in mental health using immersive virtual reality. And this is really exciting. We'll explain what that means as we go along. So stick with us. It's a really interesting story. Okay, to start off with, Brian, welcome.
Thank you, Jean. It's a pleasure to be here.
And where are you in the world?
I currently reside in the state of Nevada in the United States, specifically Sparks, Nevada.
Okay, all right. And what sort of landscape is that? Is that mountains or desert, or I don't really have a vision yet?
It's both, actually. So it's high desert, mountainous, but not so high in the mountains that it causes you altitude sickness by any measure. But certainly you can distinguish the two when you go into the into the more zero levels, or something that hasn't got any altitude to it.
Sure. Yep. Okay. Tell us a bit about your background professionally.
Sure. Thanks, Jean. So I'm a 39-year-old professional, or I've been a professional for 39 years. I'm not 39. So I've generally been in a multitude of verticals within businesses. I've done engineering, operations, service for a number of companies such as General Electric and Microsoft. I've also owned 2 or 3 different companies that we've started in historic preservation and industrial inspection. And actually, those are all outshoots of my background in medical imaging, specifically computed tomography. So that's a whole different world and of interest. But actually, we had started a company, and about after 4 years, we found that we were not going to be as successful as we wanted to be. So I had to, retool. And so for the last 11 years, I've been working on cybersecurity and in product security. So in the security piece, it's been a really interesting evolution. That's when I got into more public sector activities. So I worked for the state of Nevada. I was the information security officer for them. And then I became the chief information security officer for the state of Nevada. After I transitioned out of the CISO job out of Nevada, or the state of Nevada, I went to a company that was doing some groundbreaking work. And it was a private sector company that was doing some very, very interesting work in that space. And then, of course, came along 2020 and COVID. And as they were a startup, things didn't work out well for them. So that was fine. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to hang out my shingle again. And ever since then, I've been the owner and CEO of CyberPros 360. And part of that whole evolution in being in security, I have a lot of relationships, and I've got several partners or business partners or affiliates or associations that were getting into smart cities. So as an engineer, of course, that interested me. And then with all my operational background and security, that activity kind of became encompassed into my professional life. And that's when I met Gordon, who we were working on a similar project, a few years back. And at that point in time, that work had culminated. And so I was back into, my cybersecurity work. And Gordon had actually contacted me, and he said,
that's Gordon Dodson. Yeah.
Gordon Dodson. Yes. He's the owner and founder of VRX Solutions.
Okay.
And he gave me the briefing of the background about what he had been doing for as an adjunct for all of his expertise from the military and from his own personal perspective. And so he said, would you be interested in looking into bringing into a business association immersive virtual reality for therapy, connecting people who are having mental health issues and connecting them to therapists and through a mechanism. And that's how we actually got into this. And as a piece of the work, and as our opportunities have grown, and reflecting upon everything that seems to be coming in quick succession, I'm now a managing partner for VRX Solutions. So it's a very exciting opportunity for me. And the real thrill of this business, I'm sure we'll get into, but it's very visionary and very forward. And my whole career really has, if you want to put it into a nutshell, is I bring global world-class solutions from the thought into the operational capability. And that's really what I strive to do. And fortunately, at this point in my career, I've had the opportunity to pick, the subjects that I would be interested in, as opposed to, you're with a company and they choose your direction. So this has been a real refreshing time for me.
Yeah. So I can hear you've worked in many, many areas of business. And then later in your career, it's certainly satisfying when you can bring skills from all those different areas together and realize, hey, I know how to do that.
Yes, absolutely.
Bring those solutions together in ways that you couldn't, 20 or 30 years ago. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start. Tell me a bit about the business and sort of your vision of that. And well, actually, why don't we start with a problem that the business is solving and talk a bit about that.
Okay. So obviously, there's a lot of mental health issues, and you can compartmentalize mental health issues and many groups of people and so forth. But but what we have really focused on, and this is really based upon Gordon's really, really excellent vision. And I think we can talk about the problem in general, but specifically right now, the focus is more on subjects such as veterans, because they are having some very large or very increasingly bits of information, or not bits, I'm sorry, it's not bits of information. It's statistically significant how many veterans are committing suicide. We have, with the advancement in military technologies, most of at least the forward or most advanced countries with military, they tend to not have a lot of deaths anymore. Not that they don't have them, but they're not in astronomical numbers like you would see in World War II.
Yes.
And so forth. But you see a lot of battlefield injuries, a lot of limbs lost, and probably what the most underreported or under-focused on issue is the mental health. I mean, war is terrible for anyone, but when you boil it down to people who have actually been in combat and who have now left the military, whether they are disabled or whether they are still whole-bodied, a lot of times, they have mental challenges, especially with PTSD.
So that the shift in the type of warfare we have now has shifted the kinds of injuries, and instead of necessarily being physical, tangible injuries, there's an awful lot more mental health issues. Is that what you're saying?
And I am. And so I just want to clarify something there. I think no matter what war, whether you went back to, in the 1600s, the Crusades, no matter what, you always have had a mental aspect, to veterans, to
Absolutely.
people who've been in combat. It's just, I don't think it's ever been particularly recognized, especially, given the stigma. You're not supposed to be this. You shouldn't have, these maladies. And quite frankly, I'm an amateur historian. I've been studying, history for about the past 50 years, really. And, I tend to focus on military
Mm.
And from what I've learned, although I've never experienced it myself, I don't know how you couldn't have some type of traumatic, um, reflection as
Mm.
you go through.
Mm. Yeah.
Whether you're a combat veteran or not, it certainly
Yes.
is I think it's a very pervasive problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just read that from the Afghan and Iraq veterans, 15% of them, or 116,000 veterans, are diagnosed with PTSD or depression. So it's a very significant problem, and I think it's also quite crucial with men, because in our society, men are less supported in getting mental health support and being allowed to talk about things like that. So I certainly understand the depth of that problem. Yeah. And suicide's been a huge issue. Was it in 2021, 6,392 veterans died by suicide, and there's probably many more that weren't noted as suicide. But that's an awful lot of people, and
it is.
Wanting to do something about that is that's a huge thing.
And the ratio of combat deaths to the number of suicides is just untenable. This is something that just anyone who has been associated or known people who have been in the military, you have to have some heart for what that means. It's just so as part of the solution, and what Gordon has been passionate about for a long time, he has been really involved in as a veteran. He has been involved in bringing this type of a solution, to the world from his own personal experiences, and I think we all have personal experiences that might fit you into a category where you might need some help at some time.
Sure, absolutely.
So his time has been very focused on bringing it, but his effort, like what I've experienced with some other businesses that I've brought or attempted to bring into the mainstream, your idea is more advanced than the capability that exists at the time that you're trying to do it.
Yes.
So his work, is really augmented or supported now by the fact that the types of therapies that are available, immersive therapy, I mean, it's really expanded. I mean, I think if you really think about it, maybe 20 years ago, nobody ever really talked about any of this, or they might think of one or two scenarios, but the science around it and the therapeutics that are coming out, in order to combat mental health problems, I think is significantly advanced.
Yes.
And the other, it's like a three-legged stool, right? You need the conceptualization, you need the capability,
yes,
in this case, therapeutic capability, but you also need a platform.
Yes.
You need some type of a platform. And unfortunately, when you think about delivering therapy, it's still in a brick and mortar state. A person, a veteran, you have to make an appointment. You go to an office. The appointments, are, the therapists are overworked in many cases, or we have a lot of therapists and not enough people are able to get that therapy through the way that the network is distributed. So I've got to drive here or make this appointment or whatever. So what we know now, which is absolutely true, is we can deliver all three of the pillars of this effort. We have the model is very clear with some very specific groups that we want to focus on first, but it could expand to numerous ones. It's really an unlimited ceiling when it comes to the number of groups you could treat if you have the right therapeutic the right therapeutics, and you have the mechanism to deliver it in a seamless way. So we have to have an enterprise solution. And with the technologies that we have today, there's absolutely no reason, especially driven after COVID and many businesses shifted from, on-premises work, and then they shifted heavily over into the at-home scenario. Now, that presents its own problems, but that's a whole conversation for another day.
Sure, yeah, and certainly with COVID, we realized many services could be delivered online, that we dismissed that as an option before. And now we're realizing not only can they be delivered online, but we can deliver solutions that work even better online than they might have in person, different solutions. And that's what I hear about VRX Solutions.
Thank you. And that's it. It's our ability to take all three of those pillars and merge them into a enterprise solution that would be seamless to the particular person, client of VRX, if you wish, or happens to be a person who is in need of therapy, and you have the matched therapist on the other end based upon some intake forms and algorithms that would say, okay, well, we have this person with PTSD is a great example, and the therapeutic organizations that would be part of our capability, that they specialize in PTSD, we may be able to match them and make some consistency out of it. And the best part of it is it can either be a scheduled or a regular set of sessions, or in the instance, and this is one of Gordon's, and I absolutely support this, his primary use case, especially for veterans, is that many times you'll have a veteran who is in crisis after hours. It's 2 a.m., and people can spiral into a life-threatening scenario, a suicide scenario, very quickly. So the intent would be is that on demand, if someone is in crisis and they know how our solution works, they would be able to get a 7x24 by 365 therapist, a licensed therapist, or somebody associated in the profession that would be able to deliver something instantaneously, regardless of the time. Because most of the time, at least what my research has shown and what has been backed up by, the people who, the veterans who do experience, PTSD and issues after hours, if you want to call that, is that normally happens, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. So who do you call? Now the 800 number, 888, I can't recall the prefix, you can call and get some help, but they're not licensed therapists. God bless them. They're volunteers who are helping the crisis line management. But, at that time, would it be better to have somebody who's actually licensed to help that person work through that particular crisis moment? In an on-demand
so that
scenario.
VRX can offer both crisis counseling with licensed therapists and scheduled care, and have it an immersive situation so that it's quite profound in that sense. Might have a deeper connection than walking into an office, and that you don't have the travel time.
Right.
And so there's an awful lot of benefits from the online option.
Privacy, consistency, immediacy. You can interject all of those into a sentence if you look at it, and it doesn't have to always be therapeutic or a therapist. We're also looking to have wellness capabilities. Many companies out there have content, but they don't have a method, an enterprise method to deliver that content. So
yes, definitely skill building and allowing people to learn to self-soothe, self-care, manage well-being in sort of practical day-to-day skills that add to self-management, so they can head off crises more easily. Yep. That
I
makes
guess
sense.
you could call us the cyber taxi or the cyber ambulance or the whatever you want to call us. We're the mechanism to make it seamless so that people don't have what they need is not delayed, by the brick and mortar solutions that currently prevail in the global lexicon.
Yes, yes. Now, I remember reading about that there's help in people transitioning out of the services and moving more seamlessly into supported care. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so that's called the TAP program. And there are various permeations depending upon the branch of service.
Yes.
But they all have a TAP program, except I think Space Forces. I think they have yet to put one in place, but I'm sure that they have plans to put one in. The VA has been good at bringing some online capability to that transitional process. However, what they lack is the information we just talked about. How do we get therapy on demand, or how do we get a routine capability that otherwise sometimes you wait 3 months, 6 months to intake into the program. They also still provide you physical records, so your medical records. So this process starts, it depends on which branch you're in, but it can start, I think, anywhere from 2 years. And of course, Gordon will be able to correct me because he knows these statistics and, the empirical statistics. Yes. But but it all revolves around the same premise. You have your records, and there's a whole program by branch as you transition out and enter into the VA system. Now, there's a lot of there are a lot of areas that can be significantly improved upon. One is the fact that medical records, being paper, it's not the best method for continuous building of your medical information as your life proceeds.
Yes.
And so we are offering that as well as a combinatory piece to what we deliver, which is not only can you be provided, various types of sessions that we will provide as a service, but also we will have the capability to be able to get your medical records, and on top of the other solutions that we are going to integrate or in the process of integrating, we can actually reach out to peer institutions that are willing to work with us. So if you sign on to deliver therapy for people, why wouldn't you want to be able to have access for a therapist, a standard therapist that may be assigned, or an emergency situation where we can, where all your medical records exist, we can actually have those pulled, convolved, and have it ready for the therapist there based on an algorithm. So instead of a therapist who may not know the particular client or patient, however you want to refer to them, we will be able to help them, give them a really, really well-established piece of information so they don't have to take the first 10 minutes to figure out, what is this person about? What are their major issues? What historically has happened to them? Now, we can do this. It wouldn't matter whether it's all about, the mental health aspect, or we can do the physical aspect. We would be able to do MRIs or CTs and findings and so forth. So it's a pretty elaborate dance when you stop and say, well, that would be a lot, but the technologies exist.
Yes.
And what doesn't exist, though, is there's a combination of three things here that we will provide as our intellectual property. That will be the therapy or wellness, the medical records for the individual, and
Yes.
also what's called root identity. So in the cybersecurity world, apologize for vectoring down this space, but it's a big
Sure.
passion.
No, that's relevant. It's relevant.
So zero trust. So the internet for people in general, it is untrusted. I mean, it's constantly being hacked. There are many ways to hack it and so forth. So anything that you ever connect with, literally, is an untrusted device, unless you devise a methodology that makes that communications path trusted.
Mm-hmm.
And
now that would be particularly relevant with medical information and very
absolutely.
personal mental health information. So to me, that's quite crucial in two parts. One, where if you're in crisis, it's very hard to backtrack and have the presence of mind to say, oh, I had surgery. Oh, I'm on this medication. Oh,
Right.
to give all your history. So to be able to have the records delivered to a therapist ahead of time would mean that you wouldn't have to do that. If you're in a crisis, you really wouldn't be capable of doing that effectively. But also that there would be a lot of sensitive information there that you wouldn't necessarily want. Well, you definitely wouldn't want to go anywhere else. If you've got PTSD, you wouldn't necessarily want your life insurance company knowing, or maybe your car insurance company knowing details, because those are private. So having that sense of security for information and for people, a therapist, to be able to give you advice on who you actually are and the whole context of what has been going on in mental health and medical would be very valuable, but also the sense of privacy would be very precious. So tell me a bit about the security. Obviously, cybersecurity is something you know a lot about. Tell me a bit about, there's been quite a bit of work, from what I've heard from Gordon, in making that private and protected. And I tell me a bit more, because I don't understand what would have gone into that to make that happen.
Okay, so I want to insert one thing right here as we go through this description. So we've talked about immersive therapeutic sessions and so forth. Well, what we also are able to deliver is you can actually engage in this process of connecting a patient or a client to a professional on the other end, whatever that particular profession. You can do it from a computer too. So it's been put to us that as VR headsets are still on the more expensive side, and they're not pervasive throughout the world yet, that was a point that was kind of like well, how are you really going to get out to the most in need? A lot of veterans are, they're homeless, they're living in shelters. So the good part is that we can deliver it in using computers, or we can do it in VR headsets. So I wanted to make that addition to our conversation. So it makes your base of opportunity grow quite large, because while a lot of people don't have VR headsets, almost everyone either has a computer or a phone. Now we still have to do the computer, or I'm sorry, the cell phone aspect of this, but that is our goal. So we have the computer capability, we have the immersive virtual through VR headsets, and we still have to do the phone. But even more people have phones probably now than they do have headsets or computers. Yes. So how does the cybersecurity work? Okay, so the VR instance, when you initiate some type of a session through our One technology, through one of our partners, that in itself actually will be manifested in the next company that we work with, because they use a Hyperledger quantum resistant or quantum secure. It's not resistant, it's secure Hyperledger technology. So that's blockchain capability. And what we will do is we are going to be the command and control nodule behind that. So when you say that think about it like this. So I'm talking to you right now. So the internet, like I said, is inherently insecure. So how do I want to secure it? Well, there are a lot of ways to do that, but most of them are based upon some historical precepts in the way that the internet was built that makes it inherently insecure. So how do I secure that? So think of my pipe to you. How we are communicating is a single pipe, just one metal pipe, round, whatever.
Sure.
So the one partner, through their quantum solution, using blockchain, secures the inside of the pipe. So the session that happens within the virtual reality session of that technology is inside the pipe. So you and I are talking inside the pipe. So that's beautiful. Chances are, with the way that the technologies work, it would be very difficult, to break, the communications through insertion from the outside of the pipe. So what we've done is we've added a third component, another organization that provides your fundamental identity, or your root level identity. So that you give permissions out. Only you are going to tell, if I'm talking to you, I'm saying I can talk to Jean, and vice versa. And otherwise, that protects the outside of the pipe. So even if they could bore it, which they can't now, because of the way we're going to manifest this together, it all needs to be coordinated. So what we're going to do is, that's our solution, is to do the command and control piece of it and do the various aspects of, I will give away a couple of these parts, but at any rate, we'll do the command and control piece, and then we will be calling upon the services of these other organizations dynamically or statically in order to be able to make it an impermeable or hermetically sealed pipe of communications for the data, for the sessions, and so forth. So that's where the cybersecurity piece comes in, and we will turn this over to a number of laboratories if they're interested, because we have to be, at least in the United States, we have to be HIPAA compliant. So like you said, we're dealing with people's medical information. So of course that changes around the world. GDPR has an effect in Europe. Australia has its regulatory requirements. So we will focus on the United States, but when you really think about it and how the internet works, there's absolutely no reason that this cannot extend into a extensive global capability, meeting the regulatory requirements. My personal thing is cybersecurity, because I've seen a lot of what not to do, and there's still a lot of what not to do going on out there. And but that could be a whole another conversation. Sure. But anyway,
so what I'm hearing is that there's been an awful lot of groundwork, and there's been a lot of key areas that have had to be solved with quite complex technical solutions before you could even begin to think about facing the public and offering services, and an awful lot of really important groundwork to make connections, alliances, and also to do the technological and cybersecurity issues to begin. This is not a business you can set up in a week. It's an awful lot of background work behind it.
Well, I think, Jean, the best part of it is it's really built on a lifetime of what Gordon and I have done, and people like yourself and so many other people or organizations that are interested in utilizing this capability. Because if you think about it, if it is the car, the ambulance, the taxi, that's fine. So somebody gets into the taxi and they go to somewhere. Well, it's all in cyberspace that it happens. And instantaneously if necessary. So what needs to happen? You have to have, it's like brakes and gas and steering wheel. You've got to have a command and control of it. And this is the proposition that we offer over, at least by our research so far. No one else is delivering this combinatory method and mechanism. A lot of people, I mean, they're delivering virtual reality for various topics and things, games and so forth. And yes, people are using virtual reality for, for some type of therapy, but they're not doing it as an immersive, active capability. A lot of it is, okay, you go to this, you look at it in your VR headset, and, it'll, like alcohol abuse disorder. There are a lot of modules for that, and there is immersive information for that, but there's nobody on the other end helping you through that. I mean, you can read it, you can listen to the music, you can do, I understand the art therapy is a fantastic, capability. But it's not completely interactive yet. And I think that would probably distinguish us from just about anybody else in the business right now.
Yes. Okay. So that's a huge advantage where you've got somebody on the other end. Yeah. Now you've formed a lot of alliances with Department of Defense and
Yes.
with the Veterans Administration.
Correct.
So that you're developing solutions that people need.
Correct.
And you're also opening those channels, connecting with the people who actually need them. So making it easier for them to access them and having the services that are appropriate.
And that is true. And it's, in the business, as dual use, gets a lot of visibility, especially from the, public sector or governmental side, such as VA or actually for DoD. So they call it dual use in general. How I see this technology is it's a multi-use technology because it serves both public and private sector. It can be utilized by combat soldiers on the line, maybe not while they're in the midst of a battle, but certainly after a traumatic, battle. Is there a way to provide them some type of capability or support, that may help them through, a very traumatic, moment?
Yes.
Absolutely. And then
so dual use in that sense means both for military applications and the civilian world. Is that correct?
It is, but now that we're it kind of tickled my mind a bit by saying it's dual use in the military because we can do active combat people or active military, but also it applies to the veterans. And then when you think about it, and you if you take those as two separate entities because they are not one and the same, and you add the civilian component to it, now all of a sudden you've got three things. So there's where I actually kind of clarified in my mind, us talking about it just now, that's where it becomes, a multi-use capability.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. And because of those connections, I gather that because of the connections with the Veterans Administration, that you've sorted out payment so that you've adopted and been approved for 31 approved categories of 111 CPT codes for virtual reality. Now, some of that, I don't really understand what it means. So tell me a bit more about how important that is, because that's about getting these services paid for so people can actually use them.
That's correct. So it's actually an enormous point because when you think about how it works, you've got TRICARE for the veterans, or you have care as an active member of the service, or if you're in civilian life, you'll have Medicare, Medicaid, and so forth. So if you've ever been on one of these calls each quarter, that there's a body that has, they set the groundworks for all these codes and how a service that's provided by a provider is compensated for. So I go to the doctor, they treat me for X, and they submit based upon the codes that are associated with the diagnosis. So that applies to everything you can think of. It's an enormous matrix. It's really gigantic, as you can imagine, because you've got multiple codes that may overlap and how the treatment is approved or not approved. And we won't want to go down that rat hole because
but to understand that the codes are crucial to getting paid for services.
That's right.
And it also means that people who may not have money can get access to services and have them paid for.
That is correct. So the how the codes part work is that at the moment of COVID, the federal government, the United States federal government, actually did something in the proactive position. So you have a lot of medicine now that you can do online. There's no VR component to it, obviously, but they actually took into account just what you had said. They actually approved numerous codes that allow providers to be able to be reimbursed using VR. So the mechanism, and probably one of the biggest problems that this whole model would look at is that how would we deliver that? How would we bill? You can't bill the client. Only the providers are billing that. So how do we tell the providers, that they even can bill for this service? So that's part of what we deliver is that mechanism. And what's part of the command and control mechanism that we will have is that we will, once a session is completed, we'll simply signal the provider who was on the session, or somebody who's providing wellness or whatever the case may be. We will signal them, and they will bill the appropriate insurances. And so we don't have to do the billing, which would be an enormous undertaking for us. And it's really not core to our mission. Our mission is to provide, product and services to people who need mental health therapy. And the billing, I really wouldn't necessarily want to be part of that. And so what we will do is we will provide subscription services, and for therapists or their groups, the fee will go to them, and then we'll work out all the logistics. But the client is never going to get billed, as far as I know, unless, of course, they have some kind of a copay. But that's not going to be, a mechanism that we have to solve for either, at least theoretically, not that I can think of now. So, and we definitely don't want to be in that business. We want to be in the business of saving lives and helping people, whether they need it periodically, randomly, or consistently, or in an emergency situation. And we don't want to worry about that, that particular aspect of the big global picture of, healthcare delivery.
Sure. Yep. So really making it available and have a payment system there is, amazing. That's huge.
Why should we reinvent it? Let the people who do that every day use it. All they need to know is, okay, that happened, and that would all be part of us connecting who we sign up with the Hyperledger technology. We would have access to the specific person's records, but also we would be able to signal them and say, it's time to bill Medicare, Medicaid, or TRICARE, or whatever the affiliated deal is. So that model, why would it not transcend worldwide? It depends on, the country. Some of the hurdles, Jean, are, if you live in a specific state in the United States, some of the statutes say you can't have a therapist outside of that state deliver therapy. That's an issue. Some states say you can do it nationally. For veterans, they can get therapy anywhere. So it's an interesting problem, but all ones that can be solved. We're actually working with the state of Nevada right now on a program that was passed into law, and we can provide them the mechanism. Now, when they pass the law, they didn't have a tinker's clue about how they were going to deliver this, how they were going to deliver a once a year check on all their law enforcement people, So, and first of all, nobody in the world, Svengali, Houdini, I don't care who it was, would be able to assess somebody's mental state in one
right. That takes time.
51-minute sessions or something, right? I mean, you have to have some kind of capability that provides you some, next sessions and so forth.
Ongoing. Yep. Sure.
Now the money that they've set aside, we realize that we are going to be able to deliver more than what they've outlined in the legislation. Legislation says one check a year, or one assessment a year. Now, based upon how we're looking at the fiscal side of things, it looks like we could probably deliver 2-3 sessions per person each year. And then even the person or the law enforcement person could always, sign up for other services,
yes.
Outside of that, for dealing with the list is long,
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you. This has given us, quite a good picture of many different aspects of the business. And I look forward to, hearing more as you go along, but it's inspiring to see innovative solutions and ways of solving really major problems of making a difference with the mental health and interrupting the high rate of suicides with veterans. So thank you very much for talking with me today.
Well, Jean, it certainly was a pleasure, and I do thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion. It's made me really reinforce the things that I know, but it also gave me impetus for other things that maybe I hadn't quite thought of through your inquiries. So I appreciate very much your professionalism and the wonderful questions that have come.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.